Zimbabwe is a feeling. Zimbabwe is a world of wonders. Zimbabwe is not just a country, not just a place. It's much, much more than that. It's the sound of the birds early in the morning as the sun rises. It's the people you meet and the smiles no matter where you go. Our rich history, culture, and heritage. Our vibrant art, music, and creativity. Our mighty rivers. Cascading waterfalls. And enormous lakes. It's our pristine wildlife and nature.
Ngisho yena ubulawa idolobha elikhulu lenkosi lobhengula wamawa kwabulawa yomfana ko kwabulawa yokwantuthu zethu omama ngisele omama namhla ngisele ngcinela abantu abam ngisho yena ubulawa yomafavuke njengani njengetawa bulawayo ukumhleka ngikhala
wena la mame siyayo ololo
Diyekeni ngingcokole apha mina uMasithole usonkomosi usomgabhu ujobekala ngujobeka amantshalo umsongo wesimba ithwale ekhaya. I have a situation that I have to mention in this dimension, a situation about my home, my heritage, my pride, where I was born and raised, where I uttered my first words. It was in Matopo, where there are countless hills and dales, cliffs and deep ravines, perennial fountains and wandering brooks. Ogin no Kayamatate, Lelo Tilikunyada, Lelo Tilikuvina, you are our born Tilikitiri Motoro Motoro Bam Toro Voro Motoro Patirinka. At this Maringa Honitora Mwendo wa Ganganga. From the breathtaking hills of Samatogeni to the privileged picturesque province Wabulawayo. Kwanyama ipheli kuphela amazinyo endoda ochisa nyama chichinana. The home of greatness, gratified by the National Railways and the National History Museum. Oh yes, the Joshua Mkabugonkomo Museum, the home of Father Zimbabwe, Chipwe Chitedza, Umafugufugu, Umdala wethu. Bulawayo my home, Bulawayo my pride, Umuzi ogaya amabelebele, Ingwebu, Yibona chwala chwala. The home of entertainment, the preservers of Amasigo Lemvelo, through the fancy footwork and the scintillating harmonies, Sunduza will testify. The home of hospitality, the accommodation, the relaxation, the food. Oh yes, angazi ngingabala ngithini na. Ubuhle lokufudumala okuthola kwamasiya phambili. Yibona obungabonwa yinoma ngaphi. Oh yes, the home of greatness, gratified by the one and only in Southern Africa, the one amongst a few. It is the St. Mary's Cathedral Basilica, born of granite, crowned by copper. It is in Bulawayo.
Bridget.
Welcome, Bulawayo. Welcome to the place where animals have become a part of the system, where the combination of wildlife, nature, human life is defined by harmony.
Yes, sir.
Chipangali Chabalala Sanctuary, Matopo National Park will testify. Welcome, Gondonga Ziwelele. Welcome, Gomasia Pambili. Welcome, Gontu Tuziatu.
Visit Bulawayo. Gontu Tugoi Pambili. Gomasie Pambili. This message is brought to you by the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority. Visit Zimbabwe, a world of wonders. Yizimyam, Zimbo.
Zimbabwe is not just a country, not just a place. It's much, much more than that. It's the sound of the birds early in the morning as the sun rises. It's the people you meet and the smiles no matter where you go. Our rich history, culture, and heritage. Our vibrant art, music, and creativity. Our mighty rivers. Cascading waterfalls. And enormous lakes. It's our pristine wildlife and nature, still so wild and untamed. From the rolling mystical mountains and dense forests of the Eastern Highlands, down to the breathtaking beauty of the Lowveld and the vast floodplains of the Zambezi Valley, across to the balancing rocks of the Matopos. Animals still wild and roaming free. It's the feeling of inner peace and relaxation. It's the rush you get from the endless adventure opportunities.
Bridget.
It's the true beauty of a Zimbabwean sunset. It's the memories that will last forever. Zimbabwe is a feeling. Zimbabwe is a world of wonders.
It's a beautiful afternoon here in the Sunshine City, Harare, the capital city of Zimbabwe. My name is Hazel Zisani. This is the first day of Sanganai Hlanganani 2021 World Tourism Expo, Africa's premier business exchange. What have you missed so far? You've missed presentations on destinations, Eastern Highlands, south to East Lowveld, home of the famous sandstone cliffs. You've also missed a presentation of Mashingo, the cradle of our African heritage. Right now it's time for our session, our webinar session, which is being hosted by Mr. Wengai Nau, and the session is on Explore and Invest tourism sector of Zimbabwe. I'll give you a brief background on Mr. Wengai now. He is a renowned, accomplished professional who has had wide and extensive experience in tourism and hospitality, aviation and logistics sectors. His extensive industry experience took him some 27 years to achieve in Zimbabwe, the region, and international fronts. Mr. Wengai now is an entrepreneur of note with interests, having had founded Predmest Africa Limited and Wenau Africa Holdings in 2001. The companies have business operations in Zimbabwe and the Southern African region in the fields of tourism and hospitality, as well as aviation and logistics. Wengai now is the current president of the Tourism Business Council of Zimbabwe. It's over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Hazel. Thank you very much. It will be quite a good morning to everybody. Explore and invest the Zimbabwean tourism sector is our topic. As we all know, Zimbabwe in the early 80s and beyond that point, before independence, early days of independence, right up to the mid-90s, had four pillars, main pillars of the economy: agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and tourism, in that order. And some events led to the third pillar failing to make it. And as we speak today, manufacturing is on the rebound. But now we have the three main pillars, mainly agriculture, mining, agriculture, and tourism. So what then happens is we have questions. The third pillar of the economy, one of the major pillars of the economy, contributing well over 10% of the GDP, 10% of employment. Before COVID-19 struck the industry, it was the fastest growing industry, not only in Zimbabwe, but globally. It was the fastest growing employer, not only in Zimbabwe, but globally. COVID came, 19 struck, brought our business to a standstill, to a halt, but it's not all hope lost. As we move towards the post-COVID era, we have questions to ask. The third biggest pillar of the economy, where you walk, if you make a random survey, walk in the streets of Harare or Bulawayo, look for the younger generation, 30 and below. Ask them about tourism. They don't know. They actually think it's a sector that is informal. They actually don't know it employs people. They actually don't know it's one of the key pillars of the economy. And as we speak, we always talk of the youth being the leaders of tomorrow. 30 and below are the leaders of tomorrow. Some are already leaders. Walk into the bank. Try and get a facility in the bank. Give them your company profile. Give them as much detailed information as possible. They still view the industry as a high-risk industry. They still view the industry as a very unreliable and independent and also an informal business. Where are we not getting it right? How are we going to pass on this industry to the next generations to come? As I interact with people, stakeholders, service providers, I remember one day walking into a bank, trying to draw money, US dollars. And they told me, you can't draw dollars. I said, why? My account is funded. It is a US dollar account, and I'm allowed to draw dollars. And the lady said, the young lady sitting at the back of the counter said to me, it's only for exporters. And I said to her, who are exporters? She asked me, are you in tobacco? Are you a tobacco farmer? I said, no. Are you in a gold dealer or somebody registered with Fidelity? I said, no. Then she said to me, no, so I can't give you money because you're not an exporter. I said, I'm an exporter of services. I'm a registered exporter with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe as my business. I export services. The lady was struggling to understand what I was talking about, and until the manager had to intervene. So this is speaking to a whole generation not fully aware of the existence of this industry. And this is the same generation that would want to pass on the baton as we get to the other side of the life. How do we then pass it on as an industry? One, how do we convince our people here in Zimbabwe? Because as we say, charity begins at home. Before we convince the international investors, overseas investors who have one interest primarily to make a good return on their money, we need to convince the local investors who, apart from not having intention of having a good return on their money, might also want to plow back in their community, might also want to feel obliged. I give an example for myself. Myself and Hazel, at some point, we were spending our time in aircraft. In the flight deck, she was in the cabin, I was in the flight deck. But time came that I needed to move away from the flight deck and go and start investing in what I think I know best. Having had physically been born, I would say literally born in the tourism industry. My father having worked in the tourism industry. I grew up being exposed to the tourism industry. And time came, I needed to move, to invest. The reason why I went to invest in tourism was it was not the best sector in terms of return on investment. But I felt obliged to a certain extent to carry on with my father's legacy. And of course, try and also set a legacy that I'll pass on to my children. But as we speak today, my children hardly know what I try and do, apart from me managing to pay their fees until they get to high school and university. But they still don't struggle. So my question is, how are we going to convince these people to invest in this sector? The panelists that I've got here, Tawanda Mnamba, Zimbabwe Tourism Authority, Head Planning, Investment and Cooperation. I'll have questions for you, Tawanda. Ms. Chakaish Pato, Business Development Executive, non-consumptive, that's with the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Authority. These are the people managing our parks and wildlife estates. Zimbabwe Tourism Authority, for the avoidance of doubt, they are the people that regulate, market, we have got the commanded to regulate this industry in terms of statutory compliance, as well as market the country as a destination. That's Zimbabwe Tourism Authority. Then we have got Tino Kambasha, Chief Investments and Corporate Affairs Officer with the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agent, ZIDA. At some point we used to call them Zimbabwe Investment Authority. Tawanda, my questions to you. What are the tourism opportunities in the tourism sector? I've posed questions, I've posed background information and understanding of how I see how the population and our people, our citizens, view this industry. And now you want to convince people to invest in this industry. There are lots of opportunities in this industry, but it took me taking a step to find them. But we have got people sitting on the other side of the fence who are not aware of these opportunities. So, what is the government doing to promote you represent the government through the Minister of Environment, Climate, Tourism and Hospitality Industry. What is the government doing to promote and boost tourism after being heavy by COVID-19? We are talking of COVID-19 pandemic having decimated the industry, brought it to a standstill, from one of the fastest growing industries in the world to one of the least and one of the biggest liabilities the world has ever had in terms of a sector. How is the government supporting the investment in the sector? Any incentives? What about the existing operators? Is there any support in view of COVID-19 pandemic disruptions? Are we supporting the industry? Those are the questions to Tawanda. But we have more questions. Then we also have questions for Chakai from Parks and Wildlife. Just a quick rundown of the questions so that you can have, as you present, you think about them, and then at some point, as maybe you also preempt them in your presentation. There was mention of huge opportunities in the park estate. Please, can you elaborate? Are there any specific opportunities that you can share? These opportunities, the view of some of the people in the industry might view that Parks and Wildlife Management Authority, as much as they are open for business, but it's only open for business to a certain group of people and not to a certain group of people. How do you convince the investors that Parks indeed is open to everybody? By answering some of those questions that I've posed. How do you go about investing in the Parks estates? Are there set models that you use? What are the general expectations of the investors in the parks? These are questions that we would want answered in your presentations. Tino Kambasha, investment climate in Zimbabwe. How does someone go about investing in Zimbabwe? We are not aware. We are talking of local investors as well as foreign investors. Both sides still do not understand how we invest. How do you convince them? Some people view the investment protocols to be prohibitive or they are slow. How do we convince the people that indeed we are open for business? We have been talking about the ease of doing business mantra. How do we make this work to convince the would-be investors? Tell us more about the 51.49%. Does it apply in the tourism sector and how? 51.49%. Some people would call it an elephant in the room, where someone would want to bring his money and is now asked to surrender 51% of his shareholding to somebody who brought in much less. That becomes a discouragement or a discouraging factor. How does it apply? How does the 51%? Please unpack that for us so that the would-be investors can fully explore. Like I've said, the opportunities are there. You have seen Victoria Falls is growing. You have seen Hwange National Park is growing, it's rebounding. We have seen Kariba coming back. Now we have got the likes of Toko Mkosi, where there's a new dam. It's another destination in the coming. And we need to be speaking to investors to come and invest. Some pensions funds have started investing, but these are people that understand the market beyond the time we were in a crisis. So they've what I would call institutional memory of the industry. They are investing because they understand it. But we have new investors who are capitalized, by the way, fully capitalized. They've got a good wallet, but they just are not convinced this is a sector to invest in, as opposed to other sectors that might be presenting opportunities for investment. What is the risk of losing any investment in Zimbabwe? Now that I've surrendered my 51% shareholding to somebody, the majority speaks, I'm feeling I might lose my control of my business. I might lose my business. How do you unpack? How do you convince? How do you make sure this person understands that indeed his investment is secure? He will get access to his investment as and when there is a need. Those are the questions that I would pose to the panelists. So, may I start with Tawanda Munamba to give us your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wenau, for the opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe I'll go straight into my presentation. Then I'm sure I'll be able to address certain questions that have been raised. I will basically talk at large at the investing in the tourism sector. And I would want to quickly move on to just give a highlight as to accessing the destination Zimbabwe. We are accessible through air, obviously. Quite a number of airlines are available for us. And of course, we are also accessible through roads. And we are known for Bedbridge border post. But that's not probably my focus. And also just to quickly highlight to say, in terms of Zimbabwe, we sell Destination Zimbabwe as a world of wonders. And we are known for our own 7 wonders, which include our wonderful people, rich history and heritage, the majestic Victoria Falls, obviously, which is known by many, and others. I'll look into the tourism economy. Like what Mr. Wena already highlighted, that tourism is one of the key pillars of the economy. In fact, it is the largest foreign currency earner, like he highlighted, as an exporter. And it's normally regarded as a low-hanging fruit. But I would want to look at some historical performance, probably in the past 10 years. You would probably notice that we had been on a growing trajectory until probably 2019, where things start to fall from that diagram. And of course, things went bad in 2020 as a result of COVID, where we see arrivals falling to as low as 600,000, and as well as receipts falling in the same direction. All that, what I'm simply highlighting is just to give a foundation to the investment. So if we then look probably at if we run probably from 1980 to date, we would have interesting scenarios which is probably depicted by a number of events that took place over the time. From that graph, you see tourism, of course, it has been on an increase, but at some point it was undulating, falling and rising, but on a rising trajectory until 2020, as I highlighted. Then, of course, the year 2020 is generally referred to as the COVID year, where tourism was hard hit. We saw arrivals falling by 72% in year 2020, which take us about 30 years back to around 1991 levels. And some will say probably we need the next 24 months to get back to where we were. I would probably quickly look into the indicators just to have a snapshot in terms of the performance of the tourism. In terms of arrivals, if I were highlighted, they've fallen by 72%. That's between 2019 and 2020. And of course, the receipts followed that with 71% decline. Then in terms of contribution to employment, we also saw a 0.8 percentage point decline. But in terms of investment, the story is slightly different. There is a marginal increase, probably by 0.03 between 2019 and 2020. Probably that's the only thing that you've got a green color. We probably may look in terms of the projections where we are going, but specifically probably my interest probably is drawn to the contribution to capital investments, where we are looking forward to a continued increase in terms of value of tourism investments, rising from 100 million in 2018 to 194 in 2019, 200 in 2020, and we are looking that this year we should be close to 300. It's 280. I'll then probably want to look at where to invest in the tourism sector. Where do we take demand to when you get into the tourism sector? Everyone who have got their money, they don't want to throw it anyway and anyhow. They really need to guard it jealously. And for that reason, we are presenting a platform where your money will be really secure, where it will be very jealously guarded. Just look at the tourism industry. It's quite diverse. One can look in terms of travel planning, one can look in terms of transport, accommodation, food and shopping, local travel, and the like. That's in general. But I would also want to zero into some specific areas. You discover that Zimbabwe at large is less diversified product base, and obviously is underinvested, especially in terms of accommodation, conferencing, resorts, even in terms of transport, and even theme parks. So these are some of the areas that are very key in terms of investment, and one probably need to look in those areas. And I would also want to emphasize that shopping malls are a very critical component in the tourism. Just like we see many people flying to Dubai, flying to Paris to do shopping. I will not mention South Africa. It's all about shopping. So shopping is one of the key components infrastructure that is really necessary. Just to amplify probably my point in terms of accommodation, I'll probably look into some statistics to make some probably a convincing statement to say when you look in terms of the number of room capacity in Zimbabwe, we are just above 9,000, which kind of translates to 17,798 beds as a country. That's minus your guest house probably and lodges. But looking at the hotel room capacity, we are standing at 9,000. And surely you find if we decide probably to host a very big or a mega conference or an event at 9,000, it means we should be distributing people across the country. And if there are 10,000, obviously they will probably have to also borrow from South Africa or Zambia or else. We need to post some other people. In other words, I'm trying to amplify the point to say we are underinvested in terms of accommodation, which brings to the point that it is a major opportunity to invest in tourism, particularly in the accommodation sector. And one probably may look in terms of the different provinces. Probably Harare is peaking, I think, over 5,000. But if you look at some other provinces, they've got probably less than 200 hotel rooms. And with the devolution, definitely there is that need to make sure that every province comes to the parts and be well represented. I would probably also look in terms of conferencing. It is on the rising, and unfortunately in Zimbabwe, we are probably not matching in terms of infrastructure, and it provides the biggest also opportunity for investors to look at that, to look in terms of conferencing facilities. And in most cases around the country, you will find we have got probably more of just rooms around, probably which are not probably matched with the services or facilities that makes them the real conferencing. Then obviously we've got also other opportunities in terms of park estates. Already parks will probably elaborate on that. And of course, in terms of sustainability, we also have got a big deal in terms of recycling. In fact, most of the tourism community is going green, and it also provides opportunities for investors to look into that direction. Your electric vehicles, your electric buses, and so many those that comes with that. Then obviously there is the component to do with communities, where we need that investment, the partnership with the communities to create the community-based enterprises and to create the tourism value chain. All of the foodstuff that we probably consume in the tourism sector comes from the farmers, one way or the other. So there is that opportunity to partner with the communities so that they probably do the proper farming, which obviously is required. I would then quickly move on to look at in terms of the incentives put across by the government. There are quite a number. I can talk about the tourism development zones through SI 50 of 2006, where operators can, if you are an investor or an operator, you can import capital goods duty-free across the 90 DZs. There are also duty rebates for capital goods through SI 279. And also there is also an opportunity for safari vehicles through SI 276. And of course, there are special economic zones that are being in the offing. Looking in terms of the COVID, I would want to quickly highlight probably what the government probably has already done in view of COVID. To start with, there was launched for the National Tourism Recovery and Growth Strategy, which provided a number of tourism support facilities, including the revolving fund. And also, we also want to take note that the vaccination drive or overdrive is one of the major approach by government to make sure that the issue to do with COVID is under control. And from there, you can take note that it was the Vice President who is the Minister of Health, obviously, who started with the vaccination. And probably one would want to ask in terms of the investment, you find the COVID has not probably really impacted the way it impacted the arrivals and the receipts, because a number of facilities they've been up, and most of the investors have taken advantage of that time where there were lockdowns, because most of the investors don't look at a 1 year, they are looking at a horizon of probably 15, 20, 30 years. So COVID has probably not really affected the investment the way it has affected. However, a full study is going to be commissioned, I'm sure, sometime this year to really understand the impact. So the case for investment in the tourism sector remains very alive. And one probably would ask, so I normally call it, what time is it? Surely the time where we are right now is the correct time to invest in the tourism sector of Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Thank you, Tawanda. Maybe what I can do is I will, before I move to the next speaker, before I have questions for him, we will need to have open questions in this room, and also the other participants following virtually. But in the interest of time, maybe let me say this to our presenters, that let's try and as much as possible to keep our presentation within 10 minutes so that we will have more time for questions and also move to the next panelist. So do you have any questions? I would also ask, I'm not sure if Hazel, you are following on the chat, if there are any questions that will be sent there. I might ask you to read them out for us. But if there are, do we have any questions that we can take now?
At the moment, there are no questions, sir.
Sorry?
There are no questions at the moment.
Thank you. Or comments.
So maybe you can open it to the floor.
Thank you. I see the chairman has got his hand up. So maybe if we can allow the chairman to start. Do we have mics, mobile mics to pass on? The chairman would want to speak. I was to ask you a question, Tawanda. There is agriculture, there is mining, there is manufacturing. I could go and invest my money as an investor. I could go and invest in agriculture because the market is ready. And there are no threats, real threats of lockdown. Because lockdown, people still want to eat. How do you convince me to take my money, bring my money to tourism, and not take it to agriculture or to mining? Just a question, but not, you will not answer it now. Let me get the chairman to pose a question.
Thank you. He will answer it later. Tawanda, what were the real lessons that we learned out of COVID? Tourism industry is a people-based industry. There was no movement. Your employment was hit, and all of those other negatives, and yet we still say it's a low-hanging fruit. So if there is another COVID, what have we learned from this one?
Thank you. I'm sure I will take 2 more questions, and then we can give him the opportunity to respond. Any other question?
Sorry, and also you from the Tourism Business Council, I'm sure you can also assist with answers, because we just want to get an insight into what we can do going forward.
Thank you. Maybe as we are looking for more questions, I'll also ask a question that I will ask at some point. I'll also assist. But if you listened to my vote of thanks when the minister came here, it might have been a prophet, but so if I may say, I said we will have online sessions. I gave an example of we will have online dating, we will have online marriages. But surely there's a point where we need to meet physically for our marriage to materialize. I'm sure you all understand what I'm talking about. Let's flip that over and put it in tourism industry. Money is not exchanged when, not a lot of it, it's not exchanged when you do things virtually. The airlines want seats, people on the seats so that they make the money. The hotels want people in the bed to make money. So virtual is there, but how do we then, like the chairman has said, what lessons have we learned? How do we need to move forward? Because the end game, how to win this war against the pandemic is when you are able to get people coming again to physical experience. Yes, they are going to see the attractions virtually. It's going to stimulate their interest, but the way they are going to quench their thirst of that interest is to physically come there. What lessons have we learned in this COVID? Any more questions? I see a hand there. Maybe you can also introduce yourself, sir, and then you can speak.
Good day. Thank you so much, Mr. Wanda, for the presentation. My name is God Knows Homwe from Yeduland Travel. I've noticed you presented on us as a country achieving the herd community in terms of vaccination. So I just want to find out, Zimbabwe has been commended for its responses towards COVID-19 and vaccination. Has the industry, especially ZTA, leverage on that in improving the country's image in terms of our brand image, in terms of leveraging from that, what the Minister of Health has done in responding to COVID-19. But however, for the industry, for tourism and hospitality, has it managed to spring from that in improving the country's image to bring confidence for international travelers as well, for domestic travelers, in terms of being confident in coming to Zimbabwe? And another quick question around that, has the crisis also brought an opportunity for the sector to increase its direct e-commerce channel share within the southern region in terms of improving e-commerce within the sector?
Thank you. I think maybe we can, yes, so I see your hand is up.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Mr. Innocent Manyera. There are actually two questions. The first one, from your presentation, Tawanda, I tend to agree with the moderator's opening remarks that tourism industry is not a sector quite familiar with investors across all generations and industry and commerce in totality. Given that accommodation facilities registered are known, they are plus or minus 9,500. What incentives are available to attract more investors in tourism and hospitality? The second question from Mr. Manyera, are there any areas we need to correct as a country to drive or attract more investment in tourism and hospitality in totality?
Thank you. Those are questions. I think in the interest of time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to say he has taken quite a couple of brickbats from what I can see. These questions are enough to really give him quite a day. So in the interest of time, I will probably need, with your indulgence, I will need to allow him to respond to these questions. Unless there are no real burning questions, we will close this session, this panelist, and then we go to the next panelist, so that at least we are seen to be balancing between the interest of answering some questions as well as time at the same time. So, Tawanda, it's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I thought, like what Mr. Chair said, to say we'll share a question, I thought you then started by answering the part that has been asked.
Yes, maybe I can do this. Let me make it this way, Mr. Chair. To answer your question, we have learned a lot of lessons. One of the lessons that we have learned is that we should never take the aspect of physical distancing for granted. We need to, going forward, not only about COVID, but other pandemics. We have seen how other diseases like cholera, dysentery, those what we would call communicable diseases, we have seen how wild they spread in populated areas. So the lesson that we have learned as a tourism industry is going forward, even if we contain the pandemic. As we speak, I was listening to the news the other day, and I'm hearing close to 3 million of the population have taken 2 doses. I stand to be corrected on the statistics, but we are looking at least 2 million people. So as we move towards herd immunity, it will then mean we now are immune to a certain extent. We can now afford to open up the country fully, but also we should not sleep on the job. What I've seen happening now, I think Krista is here watching Vuri. I see going forward, I see hotels, even conference venues, they are now subdividing their venues and make them smaller. An example is this room that we are in. It stretches all the way to the back there, but in the interest of cutting on numbers, they've had to subdivide and make these numbers manageable. We've seen that happening in airports. We've seen that happening amongst major areas like malls and other public areas in the hotels. Hotels and restaurants have reduced their capacity to 50-60% as we speak today. So the lessons that we are learning is that we should never take things for granted. And going forward, we should embrace this as the new normal. Let's increase capacity if we have to have more people in a given area. Let's also increase in terms of area capacity so that we minimize on the transmission, not only of COVID, but other communicable diseases like I've highlighted. So that will be one of the lessons that we have learned. And of course, going forward, we would need to convince our population, locally and beyond, the traveling public, that indeed we are on the right track in terms of vaccination, in terms of all the protocols that we are there. So as an industry, we are encouraging our members never to ignore the aspect of the protocols, even at a time when government has relaxed the level of lockdown from 5 to 2. We still must mentally, our mindset, we must tell ourselves we are still at level 5, where you do not necessarily have to shake hands, minimize and restrict your travel only to essential travel. Where you move and travel, please embrace the aspect of social distancing, sanitize, and of course mask up. If we can, let's get vaccinated as a population. That's how I would answer the question.
Thank you. You can see I come to moderate you a bit. Thank you. I'll add probably from what the moderator said. I think Yedulane already added another aspect to that, the issue to do with e-commerce. It's one of the lessons that we have learned, that we need to embrace e-commerce. Of course, it comes with its own challenges, but you discover it's one of the key take-home for everyone, not probably in tourism alone, that we need to reduce. Probably it's also good for the sustainability side of the tourism, reduce probably this handling of paperwork and everything, to do everything, to maximize use of technology. Also, the other lesson is that we need to be quite aggressive with our domestic tourism, especially in the view of the restrictions, international travel, to say at the end of the day, domestic becomes our mainstay. And you had already also highlighted is to do with the space. As we shrink the capacity in terms of the holding, definitely we need to expand the facilities themselves, such that if we can run another probably meeting here, the other one can be in another room, probably doing the same meeting. Those probably are some the lessons that probably we have learned during this time. I will probably move on to another question to do with incentives. In my last probably 2 slides, I've already highlighted some incentives that are available. I think that question comes from Mr. Manyere Innocent. There are quite a number. I've talked about the issue to do with tourism development zones, where operators can import certain equipment duty-free. I've talked about 2 key SIs, the one for capital goods and the other one for safari vehicles. And over and above, there is also a special economic zone. In specific, the one Victoria Falls Special Economic Zone. All those provide incentives for investors and operators to invest and probably have some relief in their businesses. I will move on to another question. I think it relates to opportunities for e-commerce. I thought it was a comment to say, in view of this, to embrace e-commerce is probably the only way forward, and we need to accelerate that e-commerce. Then, in terms of there was a question to do with the taking advantage of the herd immunity, the vaccination vis-a-vis our image. Yes, I'm sure as the authority, as the industry, we are capitalizing on that. I'm sure you are aware that Zimbabwe has been removed from the red listing, which we ascribe to that, to say it was probably due to that vaccination drive, where we have been removed from the red listing, which then allows the world to travel to Zimbabwe. You discover that red listing probably by Europe or UK, it will restrict nearly everyone internationally and leave the domestic. So it's already improving our image as a destination. And you also probably have come across Victoria Falls to say it have already reached the herd immunity. And for government to demonstrate that, they quickly opened the borders around Victoria Falls as a way to acknowledge that Victoria Falls had reached herd immunity. I think there is one question which has been asked by the moderator, which I wanted not to answer, but I will answer in the interest of time, to say why tourism. Exactly the reason to say tourism, this is the right time to invest in tourism. Tourism is a resilient sector. when you do your project, any sector is susceptible to shocks. Even agriculture, there may be drought, there may be other things, but the rate at which one probably comes back, it probably is also important. And on its own, like what we have highlighted, tourism is an export sector. It's exports in situ. You don't need to go anywhere. You just need to export. You export again. You export again. You export again the same product, which also brings in the foreign currency. So that's the underlying. Then we say tourism is a low-hanging fruit. It is, but it needs someone to climb in the tree to get the low-hanging fruit. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawanda. Like I had requested, ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, unless there are really pressing questions, follow-up questions, if I may put it that way, we may take questions or comments quickly in a minute. Bezo, any comments? Wamba Vembu, did I read your body language okay that you want to say something?
No, Mr. Moderator, I think in the interest of time, I'm looking on the screen there. We have about 2 or 3 more presenters to come through. So I think I would agree with you that let's move on to the next panelist. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe another big round of applause for our presenter who has conducted himself very well. Where is Chakai? Is she here but not here? Yes, sir. She's virtual. Yeah, that's what I meant, here but not here.
She's joining you virtually.
So, Chakai, would like to welcome you. I'm sure she is joining us. She can hear what we are saying. Investment into parks and transboundary areas. There was a mention of huge opportunities in the park. Instead, please, can you elaborate? Are there any specific opportunities that you can share? How do you go about investing in the parks estates? Are there set models that you use? What are the general expectations of the investors in the parks? I am a tourism player for a long time, 20 years as an entrepreneur on the 19th of November. But Chakai, I need you to answer me. Am I welcome as an investor to do business with parks, or it's only for some people who are not us? Over to you. Is she close by?
She is online though, unless we can move on to the next presenter while we wait for her.
Maybe sound issues?
Thank you very much, Mr. Wengai Nau. My name is Chakai Chiunya. I'm with the Parks and Wildlife Management Authority as the Business Development Expert. I'm trying to share my screen, so please bear with me. If someone can confirm if the screen is now shared. Yes, sir?
Yes, we can see the screen now. So you might just need to adjust it a bit so that we can see everything.
Is it better now?
Yes, sir. Can you see
Maybe
that?
close the recovery section. Can you kindly close the section to your left, or will it be to your right? So that your slides are on the main, in the center. That's much better. Yes, excellent.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, tourism team. Good afternoon, our esteemed buyers, our investors. Like I said before, I'm Chakai Chiunya with the Parks and Wildlife Management Authority. And today I have been following through the discussions that we have had so far. from Mr. Munamba and from Mr. Wengai now. We have learned our lessons through the COVID pandemic. And following up to what Mr. Wengai asked, what opportunities are there in as far as the Parks and Wildlife Management estate is concerned, as well as our Transfrontier conservation areas. Yes, we have quite a number of opportunities lined up for tourism development. And as you all know, Zimbabwe's tourism is hinged on wildlife. And as parks, we are proud to say we have done well in terms of wildlife management. And we are proud of our conservation programs. We have successful elephant management programs. As you have seen, the increasing number of elephant population in our areas, such as Wande National Park, make sure that tourism thrives as long as we focus on wildlife tourism in Zimbabwe. So my focus basically is to, in terms of the guiding philosophy, because from what I've picked, some may be concerned to say the sustainability aspect of tourism vis-a-vis conservation issues. And what I'm here today is to say, for your comfort, as Parks and Wildlife Management Authority, we have guiding principles when we process these investments in our various parks areas. The main one being sustainability. We believe in whatever we do today, it should also continue in the future, not only in our generation, but also in the future. So whatever we do in terms of the infrastructure development, it's an issue of ecological compatibility, and it has to be in harmony with nature. And if you have taken note, I'm glad, Mr. Now, you are also an operator in our parks areas. If you have taken note in terms of even the nature of developments that we have, we believe in semi-permanent infrastructure so that we don't disturb the ecosystem. That way it has helped the authority, it has helped the tourism industry, it has helped conservation to grow. And a question may arise to say, as we are going forward, like Tawanda was mentioning that our bed capacity is sort of limited. As the authority, we have also picked that aspect. And we are now, through our vibrant research team that we have in the authority, we have started to engage on a process whereby we are trying to determine the issue of permanent infrastructure in our recreational areas. With the exciting Tope Mkosi coming on board, we have opportunities lined up in as far as hotels development in that area is concerned. So just again to further buttress in as far as the sustainability aspect, whatever developments that we have in our parks areas, it has to be guided by our management plans. We have management plans in place that guide us. We have zoned our parks areas. These are development areas, these are non-development areas. It has helped us. If you look at the likes of Manapools National Park, we have wilderness areas where development is not even allowed, so that we keep that intact for the continuity of tourism in Zimbabwe. And we have a wildlife tourism, wildlife policy in place. We also work closely with our EMA colleagues to make sure that whatever developments that we do in our parks areas, first and foremost, an environmental impact assessment process is carried out. And all developments going forward are guided by an EIA process. Then, come to how then do you engage with parks if you want to invest in the parks estates? We are very flexible. We are open for business. We consider what we refer to as unsolicited bids. You have got your vision, you are the dreamer, you approach the authority with your plans. Then through the ZIDA processes, our ZIDA colleagues, we engage and ensure that the best outcome comes up in terms of the proposal that we will be having for various investment opportunities that we have. Then we also are guided by the procurement disposal assets regulations, whereby in most cases our opportunities, we do them through a tender process, we advertise, you bid, whoever is the highest bidder, they get the opportunity to partner with the authority in their proposed developments for tourism. And then our models, basically, it can be an outright lease, where we give you max. So far the Act provides for 25 years maximum in as far as tourism development is concerned in the parks areas, or it can be a partnership arrangement, or it can be a permit. Like Mr. Nao was saying, our models, they don't seem to cater for this other market. I know he was referring to the local team, but we have taken note of that. We have taken note of that, and in as far as the permits regime is concerned, it's very flexible to also incorporate our local investors. And in terms of the opportunities that we have, I've already talked about Token Kosi, but basically the new exciting babe on the block is the carbon credits programs. I'm sure you have heard about that in various forums. So far, if I can share with you that we have entered into 2 agreements so far, it's quite exciting. This is the sustainable aspect that we are talking about, where people invest in Zimbabwe to keep our forests in exchange of the carbon emissions that they do, that we are paid for the good conservation business that we are doing, not only for Zimbabwe and Africa, but for the world. And the other opportunities that we have, we are looking at engaging with investors to have, as parks, we run 13% of the Zimbabwe's land. That's huge. So we are looking at partnering with investors in introducing solar farms in some of those areas. It will not disturb the wildlife. It's something that can live in harmony with our wildlife. We identify an area, we put a solar plant, and then we feed the national grid, and then we are paid, we get our lease rentals for conservation, we support conservation as additional income. And then for my other local investors, the game products aspect, where we engage in partnership to develop leather products which we can then sell as curios to our tourists. And also, I know in this forum, we have our vision. In as far as the sustainability aspect is concerned, this is why I'm talking about wildlife breeding, to say, yes, in as far as we have the wildlife, but we have other areas where we still need to stock up. So we can also partner, get land. We have areas like Nyamaneche, get land there, and let's do wildlife breeding and restock those other areas that have need. Just an exciting show there. When we say invest in wilderness experience, this is what we mean. Our tourists, they enjoy this. Just being out there in the middle of nothing, enjoying the wildlife in harmony with nature. Of course, I've talked about that. We have our other sort of forgotten areas, but that have got quite exciting opportunities, like our Chimanimani National Park. Most people who have been to Cape Town, you admire the cable car project. Why can't we have our own here in Zimbabwe, in Chimanimani National Park? The environment is ideal. It's something that can be developed, and it's something that can put Zimbabwe on the map. So partners, come on board. Let's partner for such projects in our Chimanimani National Park, our Nyanga National Park, the environment is just conducive for such activities even developing more accommodation.
Can I ask you to wind down, Chakai? Can I ask you to wind down?
Thank you. Thank you. So just to wind up, the opportunities that we have in our TFCS areas, most of them is just to show you that it's possible. We are running successful programs in our TFCS areas, and as investors, you can also engage with us and see how best we can work together in those transboundary areas. Thank you very much, Mr. Nau. That's all I have for you today. Zimbabwe, we are open for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sakai. A round of applause for her. Questions, follow-up questions? We are really pressed on time, ladies and gentlemen, so we need to maybe keep our questions very short and straight to the point so that we don't lose time. Hazel, the question?
Thank you. I have one question from Nelson Zengeni. Ms. Chakai, how do you explain your move to invest in accommodation within the Parks Estate? You being the custodian of the Parks Estate, doesn't it give you an unfair advantage by investing in accommodation? For example, if I pay rentals to you, doesn't it make my accommodation more expensive than yours?
Thank you. Please take note of that question. Maybe I'll take one more question, pressing one, and then we can have it to respond, then we can move to the next panelist very quickly. Any question? Follow-up. Sagai, maybe can I ask you to respond to that question from Nelson Zengeni?
Thank you very much, Mr. Zengeni. In response to you, as the Parks and Wildlife Management Authority, currently our market is different from what our partners are offering. We are more into the domestic markets. As you know, we offer low budget accommodation, and our partners are offering that high-end exclusive. So there is no competition there. We actually complement each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the response. I think there are no further questions. We would have wanted to maybe put some comments, but I'm sure we can put it on the chat, on public chat, so that other people can see the comments. I'm getting feedback here, so that the link that was sent to us for other people to join, people are failing to join in, so maybe you might need to look at the link again.
We will do so.
Thank you. So I'll then quickly move to the next and the final, last and final, but not the least, presenter, Tino Kambasha from the Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency. The investment climate in Zimbabwe, I think we have asked you questions. We have talked about the elephant in the room, 5149 or 4951, whichever I want to put it. Can you please unpack what ZIDA has for us this afternoon? Thank you.
Great, thank you. And the good thing about presenting last is that most of the speakers would have said everything. So I'm going to skip through quite a lot of my slides, but I would just like to confirm that you can hear me and you can see my screen.
Thank you.
Sure. So basically, I think just to summarize, quite a few people wouldn't understand what we do and where we came from. So I think, Mr. Moderator, you had alluded to where we had come from, but I think let's put more clarity to that. The Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency came into act last year in February 2020, and it repealed the Zimbabwe Investment Authority. It repealed as well the Joint Ventures Act and the Zimbabwe Special Economic Zone Authority, which was commonly known as ZIMSEZA. It then joined these three and included the one-stop shop, which was being handled under the Office of the President and Cabinet. So that's just the background of this. I'll quickly summarize this slide as well. Basically, why was this done? There was a lot of legislation which was overlapping and regulatory framework that was overlapping, uncoordinated ways of looking at investments into the country. So it was all put under one roof, under ZIDA. And this stopped silo mentality of individual units looking at things from an individual push and individual boards as well, looking at that. and ensured one place where everyone can come, get permit certificates for whatever it is that you would need to get into investments into the country, and streamlined the laws and made things much easier in pursuit of the ease of doing business going forward. So the role of ZEDA is promoting, planning, and implementing investment promotion, facilitating entry. This is where some of these investors are coming into the country and implementing investment projects. And we don't only speak about foreign investors, we speak quite closely to local investors. And you did mention, maybe I should tackle it now, about 5149. If you go through the ZEDA Act, it repeals that. We do not treat any foreigner or any local any different. All our investors are treated exactly the same. There are only two minerals where that applies, and those are classified as strategic minerals in platinum and diamond, where the government feels that those resources need to be focused on the development of the country. Otherwise, in any other investment, any foreigner, any local can own 100% of any project or any company that they want. I thought I'd just clarify that. And I think Tawanda also mentioned about how we establish and regulate the special economic zones, and I'll just break that down a bit in the next slide. And we also promote, appraise, and recommend private-public partnership and investor aftercare. So we've seen people who come with mega projects and then that doesn't get followed up. We are there to follow those up and also find out where we're lacking as a country. And then we're also promoting decentralization of investments. Again, my brother talked about that, where we're looking at, we've just recently designated Pretoria Falls as a special economic zone. We're now currently working on the master plan. There's a whole bigger project that includes Masue. There's an industrial village that we're building there, and a plan for a bigger Pretoria Falls airport so that we can become a central hub in terms of communicating and transporting people throughout the world and in Africa. It makes no sense that someone coming to Nigeria or coming from Malawi has to go through South Africa or go through Dubai. We need to improve this connectivity, and we can do this by improving our airports, and there's a bigger plan for that. So this is a story that we're telling, why invest in Zimbabwe. We're currently, again, with all other brothers and sisters in government, we are currently participating in Dubai Expo. It's proving to be quite interesting. We're getting quite a lot of feedback. But the greatest thing, and you did mention, Mr. Moderator, that we are service-driven. So we're also coming up with a framework to make the country understand that services are a sector, and our people, we think, are the biggest asset we have above any mineral. Even when you look at the amount of money coming back from the diaspora, it's contributing greatly towards our country's GDP. So our people are actually our greatest export, and we need to value them and actually give them a sector and allow them to participate in this country and take advantage of what we're calling a demographic from our people. I will not touch on the resources, the natural resources. We all know about that, and what we have in terms of platinum, gold, lithium, the potential for lithium batteries. But I think let's focus more on why we're here today. Is our country, the beautiful environment, the beautiful climate, the people that are here, and also the untapped beautiful areas that we have. We look at our Binga areas, Batoka Gorge, Masue. These are all areas, we were asking earlier, why should we look at Zimbabwe? Why invest in these areas? It's a new frontier. It's a new market that we believe is going to boom. And as ZEDA, our job is to make the investment environment more attractive and more comfortable, because money is very scared and very shy. So we want to make the investment environment that allows people to come and invest in these areas. So when we look at Zimbabwe, we like to look at it as land-linked, not land-linked, not landlocked. So we're a hub, and we have, when we're looking at tourism packages, we need to sell a package, not just one point. I think there are a lot of tourism people in the room right now. Maybe an average stay at Pretoria Falls is 1.4, 1.5 days. Why can't we have people staying in Zimbabwe having tourist packages so that they stay here for 5 to 6, 7 days? Maybe includes medical tourism and other forms of tourism and nature and wildlife resorts that they can visit. So making Zimbabwe more attractive from our end, and what is in our control is the ease of doing business. We're working with the different sectors of government, as I alluded to earlier. And we have our one-stop investment service center. So what we've done in our one-stop investment service center is we're now housing different sectors of government, whether it be EMA or the ZTA. We've got different arms of all the way down to mining and so forth. So we actually have officials from these different sectors sitting in our offices. So no one has to go around and apply for different things. They can come to ZIDA. We will now facilitate for all your investments and sort it out from one place. And then the ZIDA Act itself protects investments from expropriation. So you are covered in that, and we're giving comfort to maybe fears from indigenization and those days where investors will be scared that things will be expropriated. And the ZIDA Act gives you that cover as an act before. I want to talk about the tax incentives. I think my brother covered that, and Victoria Falls special economic zones. Now I'll just move on to the next slide. So when people look at investing in Zimbabwe, there are three general licenses that you'll be looking at. Anything to do with government or government priority projects are PPPs, public-private partnerships, which we then vet those projects and present them to a PPP committee, which then goes to cabinet for approval. So any asset to do with government, that's where we would come in and vet that. Special economic zones, these are geographical areas. We talked a bit about them. We get fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. And again, we demarcate the geographical area, obviously in consultation with our other brothers and sisters in government, being local authorities and also Treasury. And then the last one, I think, which should be quite interesting to individuals looking to invest in Zimbabwe, is general investments. So this is anyone who's just coming in to invest by themselves, whether they have a partner or they're doing it 100% by themselves. They can get that ZIDA license to protect them and give them those incentives that we talked about. So this is my final slide. And I think in the incentives, I'll just talk about what wasn't touched on. When we look at the special economic zones, the corporate tax generally is 24.72. We can zero rate that if you're in a special economic zone for up to 5 years, depending on the value you're bringing to the country. And then after that, it's 15%. So for employees, both local and expats, general tax is about 40%. That can be a flat tax of 15%, again, depending on the investments that you'll be making. And then again, non-residents withholding tax on fees for services, royalties, dividends, and customs duty. That, again, can be zero-rated depending on the type of investment. So I think I've rushed through that. I saw that the time was a bit pressed, but please have a look at the ZIDA Invest website. We've got quite exciting things on that. We've got a lot of information, and we're trying to engage both people locally. We've also got a tab for Zimbabweans in the diaspora. We're trying to engage them as well. So, yeah, I think I've tried to quickly rush through that, Mr. Moderator. I'll hand back to you and anyone else for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tino. The advantage of being the moderator, you also can be the one to ask questions first. I was listening to your presentation, which I fully appreciate, and thank you very much for that. A follow-up question, maybe we have 2 questions and we close the session. Follow-up question is that 1994, I got the privilege to be working in Uganda. As you know, those of us who know geography, Uganda is close to Rwanda. They share a lake. There are scenes that are still fresh in my memory. It was during the genocide days. So each time, after I was there for about 6 or 7 months, and I came back home through South Africa, but each time there was talk or mention of the word Rwanda, I would have memories of what I saw in that lake. I can't mention it currently. It took me a long time. And then fast forward to 2019, there was a project that were being done by our host in South Africa, and we were going in to as accompanying consultants. And the memory of Rwanda that I had was the genocide and very sad Rwanda. When I got there, it was a different site in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the people, in terms of development. More so, when you then got the opportunity to get presentations from the government officials, there is what they call Rwanda Development Agency. You walk into this building in this end, and then by the time you walk out of the building, you've got your paperwork with you. My question to you, Tino, is how long is it taking an investor to get fully compliant so that he is able to do business in this country? That is my question to you. And then, of course, I will take 2 more questions, and then we can close the session. Thank you. Any questions?
Nothing from my end.
Any questions on the floor? Mr. Chairman, can we get the mic to the chairman, please? And also, as the chairman is getting ready, what is the role of Zimbabwean investors? What do they need? Do they need any permits? Do they need anything? Or maybe we can take that. The chairman is ready for the question.
Thank you, Tino, for that presentation. The one question I had, the moderator of the session has already asked, but I was just interested in your definition of investor, because earlier on we heard from the president of the TPCZ about his own personal experiences. Who is the investor in this case, especially when you're looking at the locals? And is it in your interest, you think, to engage the people that hold the money to assist the local investor to participate, especially in the tourism area? So that question is really relating to your definition of what an investor is. From your presentation, it looks like it's a certain class of people. Can you clarify that for us?
Okay, I think let me take those. It's quite interesting that you mentioned Uganda. I think I'll start with that one, the Uganda-Rwanda experience, because what we are doing, we've just signed an MOU with the Rwanda Development Board. So as ZIDA, we've only been in existence for 1 year. And of that year, 2020 was a fully COVID year. So, and then we had a second lockdown that came through up until about January. So we're only a couple of months into it, but we do realize that we don't know everything. And what we're trying to do is to leapfrog from what others' experience have been. So we've got an MOU with the Rwanda Development Board. I was there myself a few weeks ago. Our team will be going up there again. We are also undertaking training with Singapore, who you know also rank quite highly on the ease of doing business. So we're exchanging quite a lot of information, especially intellectual information and systems, with the leaders in the world, or in Africa and in the world. So we are trying to do that. And, for them, it's taken them over 12 years to get where they are. So I think, with some time we will get there. But also we went with Zimtrade, because what you'd find, even from big numbers side, even GDP side, Rwanda is quite small, and a lot of their income is actually donor money. So they don't actually generate that much money. It's a lot of it comes through donors. But having said that, they do utilize their funds quite effectively, and we were quite impressed with what we did see. But we took Zimtrade with us along, and we're now looking for markets for Zimbabweans. So we're getting a data transfer from them and learning their systems on how to run their e-government. But at the same time, we're exporting our produce, looking at expanding our markets. We actually had one construction company that was part of our delegation that got a contract to do low-cost housing just from the 2 days we were there. So yes, definitely take a note, and we are in consultation with the Rwanda Development Board. And how long does it take to open a company? Again, we are only just starting e-government. But if you come through ZIDA, we know that generally in the country, it can take, I think, 22 days or something. If you come through ZIDA as an investor who's getting an investment license, it can take days. We have a person from the registrar's office with us. So we will improve. These things should be down to a couple of hours. But yeah, it does take a while. And from getting licenses, we are currently at about 10 working days from when all documents have been submitted. So initially, investors would request for information from us. Sometimes, most of the time, there'll be missing information that doesn't paint the picture. But once we got the full picture, it's around about 10 working days. And again, we are working on ways to reduce that. And the best way is through automation and e-government. And I'm sure you'd have noticed that's also just a new baby that came in a few months ago. So we're trying to plug that in. And you asked again, Mr. Moderator, of the role of the Zimbabwean investor, and maybe I can link this up to definition of an investor. So we have an array of types of investors. This is now my personal point of view. The Zimbabwean, when you have an investor, you have someone who might have the capital, you might have someone who might have the asset, you might have someone who wants to develop something. So I think it's quite broad. And when we look at Zimbabwean or local or international investors, we do not discriminate whatsoever. If anything, we should try and incentivize our Zimbabweans to invest in themselves. Looking at the tourism sector, what we learned listening to the first chairman that you asked earlier, what have we learned from COVID-19 is that we need to do more of our own tourism. We need to trade with ourselves more. We need to travel more, not only just in Zimbabwe, but in Africa as a whole. It's quite interesting when we were looking at figures from the African Development Bank when we had our investor promotion agency conference in Egypt earlier on this year, that Africa actually has the money to not only invest fully in itself and fully capitalize its own projects, but also to have a booming inter-Africa travel if we were all to travel to each other's countries. So I think the one thing that we did learn, even from a domestic point of view, there are a lot of people right now, I bet you maybe even in the room, if we were to ask who's been to Binga, I don't know, if you can tell me if there's a show of hands, how many people have actually been to Binga, Mr. Moderator? It's probably not everyone in that room. So these are things that we need to also learn from ourselves. So we don't discriminate between foreign and local investors. An investor is anybody who adds value and adds value in a responsible way that is not only just socially but environmentally and beneficial to the country, not only in monetary but also social way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tino. I think any comments on the platform before we close the session?
No, there are no comments, sir.
What we need to is to give Tino a round of applause and for his presentation. Ezo, I think I've done what I'm supposed to do as per your assignment. Before I usurp your powers, let me hand over back to you this session.
Thank you very much, sir. I, however, have a take-home. I'm sure our acting chief executive, Mr. Givmo Chidzidzi, heard Tino talking about Binga. I didn't see anyone raise their hands. No one has been to Binga. He also hasn't been to Binga. So I guess Mr. Chidzidzi and myself, Mrs. Faranisi, and our board chair, Tawand, no, you can sit on this one, you can stay behind. And the young lady there, I can't see her face because of the mask. I think our next trip will be to Binga. Next week, sir? Excellent. Did you hear that? I think we'll go with you, Mr. President.
I offered them.
You can't leave me out as well. I suggest you.
Definitely, you will be on the list. We are definitely going to Binga next week. Yes. However, it is a great pleasure to be here with you at this hour. We will take a short break, and for those of you who will join us later, our next session will be moderated by Tushma here, and it will be post-pandemic traveler, how to get the destination ready. For those here in Zimbabwe, it is lunchtime, bon appetit. And to those of you who are joining us from all over the world, we will see you later. Adios. Binga! Oh my God. Okay, we can go with Bridget, sir.
You are our born dilikitili motoro bam toro for motoro patilinka. At this maringa hondi tora mwendo wa ganganga. From the breathtaking hills of Ematogeni to the privileged picturesque province Wabulawayo. Kwanyama kaipheli kuphela amazinyo endoda otshisa nyama chichinana. The home of greatness, gratified by the National Railways and the National History Museum. Oh yes, the Joshua Mkabugonkomo Museum, the home of Father Zimbabwe, Chipwe Chiteza, Umafugufugu, Umdala wethu. Bulawayo my home, Bulawayo my pride, Umuzi ogaya amabelebele, Ingwe, Yibona chwala chwala. The home of entertainment, the preservers of Amasiko Lemvelo, through the fancy footwork and the scintillating harmonies, Sunduza will testify. The home of hospitality, the accommodation. The relaxation, the food. Oh yes, angazi ngingabala ngithini na. Ubuhle lokufudumala okuthola kwamasiya phambili. Yibona obungabonwa yinoma ngaphi. Oh yes, the home of greatness, gratified by the one and only in Southern Africa, the one amongst a few. It is the St. Mary's Cathedral Basilica, born of granite, crowned by copper. It is in Bulawayo.